you've made it through 3 hours of the regular show on terrestrial radio, and you wanted a little bit more, so that's why you found the Gun Talk After Show podcast, where we saved all the best things that we can't say on regular radio. Now here's Tom, Michelle, and Jim for the Gun Talk After Show.
All right, it's time for the After Show, where we're going to be, we're talking to everybody about almost everything. We have Michelle Cleland here. Hello, Michelle.
Hi, Tom.
And we have Tom Hinnick here. Hello, Thomas.
Hello.
And Jim is not here. He's actually over there in the corner, but he has laryngitis, and we're not allowing him to go like he would do.
That's totally not true whatsoever, Tom.
Yeah, you sound great, dude.
Thanks.
Let's try out a new radio voice.
Now, stop talking. I keep trying to, I tell him, the only way to get over laryngitis is to quit talking, but that's not happening because he has so much to say.
Chatty
I know.
Cathy.
Well, so, Michelle, you can actually share the news because he came in beaming about his new rifle.
Oh, my goodness. First thing this morning, hey, what kind of ammo do you guys carry? I need some 4570.
Yeah.
And yes, there's a reason.
He won a 4570 Marlin 1895 rifle.
Yes.
That's cool.
And with his favorite accessory, a large loop.
Oh, it has the large loop. I didn't even hear that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my gosh. That's terrific.
Way excited. He can't wait.
Talk about something that's going to get him into reloading.
Right? Yeah, that will do it.
We're going with our reloading theme for the show. You start reloading or buying ammo for that. That's some big old cartridges. Look like cigars.
Yes, they are.
But fun. Oh, man, that's great. Now, in Ohio, can you use that for your deer hunting?
We are straight wall cartridges for rifle.
And that is straight wall cartridge.
Mm-hmm.
So that would work with the Hornady Love Revolution ammo, those pointed bullets. That's a 250-yard rifle without a problem.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
So imagine he'll be clearing the shelf off tomorrow.
That's right. He'll be in there saying, gimme.
Just don't breathe on anybody, Jim.
Yeah. And then he'll ring it up and he'll go, what?
Maybe just one box to
I'll
start
take
off with.
one box, por favor.
Well, I heard that you had this addiction to reloading, so perhaps you have some ammo you could send his way?
I have gotten over my addiction.
Okay.
I have. I really did enjoy loading. I used to do a lot of it. I do almost none now. And primarily because we work with so many ammo makers that we have ammo coming in left and right. And I know that sounds like a horrible thing. Gee, we have ammo.
Terrible.
But as a result, you end up not doing much loading.
Right.
Which is kind of a shame because I like the whole process.
Well, it's a hobby in itself, and you can definitely fine-tune your firearm a lot better. But
Yep.
But it does get to be one of those things that can be a very, as you alluded to in the show, a non-stressful moment. So you can kind of sit there with your thoughts. And
It is. You maybe put on a little music and you just kind of sit back. You really have to eliminate all the distractions. It's just too important.
Right.
And we mentioned during the show you can double charge. What we mean by that is for instance, if a load says a 45 Colt, and it says you use 4 grains, and grains are not the individual kernels, that's an actual unit of measure, or a weight grain. There are 7,000 grains in a pound. 4 grains of powder, it would be really easy to dump a double load, and you still wouldn't be able to see it. It would all fit into the case, right?
Right.
Except that it'll blow your gun up, which is a bad thing. So you really have to pay attention, and particularly on those cartridges like that where the powder charges are pretty light, and you could do that. Now, I have been with a guy, we were out shooting prairie dogs, and he loaded up and pulled the trigger, and it just goes click, and open it up, and the case comes out, but he had a whole row in his cartridge loading tray.
He skipped the whole row?
He didn't put any powder in it. So the primer would throw the bullet out, stick it in the barrel, and then you'd pull it out and go, all right, So it's kind of a little pain, but that's one of those, got distracted, missed the load, missed that row when he's throwing powder in it.
That happens.
It happens. Generally speaking, it would be really honestly hard to hurt yourself with a reload if you follow the rules at all.
Right, which is you have to follow what we say is the recipe, right? You have to follow the reloading data that is published by these companies.
But my buddy said he's got a special load that I can use.
Well, I can just switch out this powder. It says it, and I can just use the same grains. Oh, yeah. That's exactly how it doesn't work.
Sure, yeah, exactly. And you are not a scientist, and you are not a ballistician, and
right.
No. The other thing is
because it's burn rates. People need to understand it's just
burn
pressure.
rates, and it's not linear.
Right.
So, adding 10% may not get you a 10% increase in pressure or velocity. It may get you a 50% increase in pressure, which your rifle or your handgun is not set up for.
Right.
So just kind of if you follow the published loads. Oh, and by the way, use current loading data. So get the current information. Because I have all these old loading manuals from like 30, 40, 50 years ago. And the loads that they had back then, before we had chronographs and pressure sensors and all, holy cow. I mean, I know they probably worked, but man, are they hot. They're just, they're way too overpressure. So you want current loading information if you're going to do that. Hey, look, let's go to the phones. We got folks, I don't want them to get bored and kind of bail out on us here. We got Jill is on line 3 out of Virginia. Hello, Jill. Thank you for your patience.
Well, you asked about people, why they carried or why they didn't. The fact is, I used to have a gun, but somebody broke in the house when I wasn't there and stole it from me.
Oh.
And I've never had one since. The thing about it isn't practical for me to have one. When I used to be a street vendor, I would take the gun with me to work, and I had a sea bag. I put my own work gloves in there. I bought them myself because my boss started buying food gloves made in China, and I wouldn't use those. So I took them with me to work, and I took other things. And I worked there, and it was okay. I used to unload the gun once I got to work. But the thing about that later on, I was working at the shopping cart factory at night. I had 2 jobs. They wouldn't let me take the gun into the shopping cart factory, so I couldn't take it to the hot dog cart either because I had to go straight from there to the shopping cart factory. So, and it usually has been like this. Any place I worked, they wouldn't usually let me bring a gun, and the places I go, you can't bring them. So you can't very well have it. You can't just dump it on the ground when you go into someplace. So it's not much use in having one. In fact, I'm living in a subsidized house, and I'm not even supposed to have a weapon, for instance, a knife in the subsidized house, though I was told I could have a food knife. But
well, I was going to say, you got a steak knife, so you got a knife.
But carrying something around would make it a weapon, and it would not be a very good idea. I might get in trouble, not be allowed to stay in the house.
Yeah,
so
and you're right. I mean, your circumstances dictate everything. I mean, if it's not conducive for you to do that, and you can't change your circumstances, then you got to make choices. In your case, a steak knife is a decent tool, a weapon, and if they say you can't carry a knife, then you got to make that call. But I'm sorry for that history. I'm sorry that somebody stole your gun, but it does, and your call does point out that circumstances make all the difference, and what's right for one person is definitely not right for other people. Jill, thank you for the call. I appreciate that. I do want to go down to line 4. Keith is in Billings, Montana, with an interesting story here. Hey, Keith.
Well, good afternoon, Tom.
Yes, sir.
Got a quick story for you. Maybe you can give me some advice. I certainly do need some. 1999, I was heading east towards North Dakota, got outside of the Mandan, and there was a drug check station on the interstate. And it happened to be the end of the Sturgis rally, and at a exit 123, there was a drug check station going on the interstate, and they were veering all the traffic off and up over the overpass and checking everybody. And my wife was driving, and she was a little nervous at the moment because we've never encountered anything like that. And we were on our way to Minnesota for a camping trip and vacation. And the first things that they asked, the law enforcement agency, do you have any drugs? The next question was, do you have any weapons? And the next question was, do you have any alcohol? And I was in the passenger side, and my wife and I looked at each other because we argued about taking a handgun on this trip because we were planning on doing some camping in Minnesota, and I know that there's zillions of black bears. I was just concerned, and I'm an old boy from the old days.
All right, Keith, I got to ask you to speed through this, okay?
Okay. Got arrested. I volunteered that I had a 9mm Sig Sauer. It was loaded in underneath the back seat, and they rushed me off and arrested me. I went on my vacation, came back, sat down at where I was.
What was the charge? What did they charge you with?
Concealed loaded weapon, misdemeanor A and B. So I got through all that. 11 years later, it's expunged off my record. And lo and behold, a bunch of friends, we took a fishing trip back in 2016 to British Columbia.
Okay.
And the Canadian Mounted Police were waiting the arrival of our float plane, and they arrested me at that point. And they told me, well, they didn't arrest me. They actually held me and says, you're not welcome in our country because you have this violation on your record. And I said, and I admitted what I did. And he says, in our country, it's a felony, and you're going to have to get back on the float plane. So, a while later, I waited.
So you do not have a felony conviction in the U.S., right?
I did not.
All right. So you can legally buy a gun in the U.S.
I have bought more than a dozen guns since this incident, and I also have my concealed carry permit. It has been expunged off my record since 2010.
So did you follow up once this whole debacle happened with British Columbia or Canada and find out what's going on here?
They told me that I was a felon, and they didn't want me in the country.
But I understand that. But after you got back, did you go back and say, okay, guys, explain this? I mean, I would have gone, okay, they're going to send me out of their country. I can't do anything about that. But I would go back and say, explain to me how a misdemeanor conviction in the U.S. becomes a felony conviction in Canada. I would push this point. I would find out what the heck's going on, because this does not make sense to me.
Well, the young Mountie told me that in their country, this original charge was a felony in their country, and they didn't want anything to do with me up there. Okay. And the funny thing about it was I've been to Canada before this incident. I drove across the border twice visiting Lake Louise, and I actually flew into Vancouver and Nanaimo years before this, even after this all had happened to me. But in 2016, when I sent, because we were flying into Vancouver to get, I think it was Vancouver. We had to send in our passports, and they did a check, and apparently at that time it picked up from the U.S.
Well, I got to tell you, this is the first I've ever heard of anything like that. I've never heard this before. I'm going to do a little poke around and see what I can find out. But if I were you, I would not just take this. I would turn right back around and contact the authorities in Canada and say, all right, this is not a felony conviction here. And, so I don't have a felony conviction. So let's figure this thing out. I would push back. Now, that's assuming you ever want to go to Canada again. And if you don't, then don't worry about it.
Yeah. I have no record whatsoever because I've been able to buy guns and everything else.
I got all that. I got all that. What I'm saying is you personally need to take this up with Canada somehow to find out what's going on. And in the meantime, I'm going to look into it. Like I said, I've never heard of this before, but I'm going to see what I can find out. I got to keep scooting here, Keith. I appreciate the call, sir. I'm sorry for your problems, but I do appreciate you bringing it up and letting us know about it. Thank you, sir. Tell you what, let's take a quick break here. We'll be back with Michelle and Tom in just a sec.
A new edge in comfort from Proper. The ultra-comfortable and lightweight yet durable, budget-friendly EdgeTech collection of pants, polos, and shorts prevents wrinkles and holds up against everyday demands. With men's and women's pants in non-tactical slick, tactical, and EMS versions, EdgeTech from Proper delivers outstanding performance and value for work or everyday wear. Visit Proper.com to learn more about the EdgeTech collection from Proper.
Attacks happen every day. How will you react? See real people put into real-life criminal attack situations on First Person Defender. Discover what works and what doesn't. Kidnapping, ATM robbery, home invasion, and other attacks. Learn how to save your life and the lives of your family. Get the entire first season on DVD at ShopGunTalk.com. Get prepared. ShopGunTalk.com.
All right, welcome back. We are still doing the after show here, having a bunch of fun. Let's jump up to line 1 where Jack is with us out of Medford, Oregon. Hey, Jack, thanks for your patience and holding on.
Hey, no sweat, Tom. I just, a couple, 3 or 4 weeks, maybe a month ago, you had some down there talking about he didn't know what he was buying and what his bullet performance was. And I thought, that guy needs to learn how to reload. This show that you had today is perfect. I mean,
you make a good point. If even if somebody doesn't reload, there's so much information in a good reloading manual, the ones from Sierra or Hornady or Hodgdon or Barnes or any of them. You can look up all these cartridges and see what the velocities are with different bullets and what they do, and it's just like a little encyclopedia of ballistics.
Exactly, and I never started reloading until I got in the Air Force, and I started reloading shot shells down there in Kirtland during flight school to hunt pheasant, and then I got the good fortune of getting stationed up in Alaska, which, boy from Kentucky, that was his dream.
Yeah, no kidding.
So I ended up buying a RCBS Junior off of another C-130 flight engineer, and he showed me a few things, and I really took off on it, and I really enjoyed it. And
do you still reload?
Oh, yeah. Well, before I went to Afghanistan in 2010, I got me the Dillon 650 for my AR.
For those who, that's a progressive loader. You can make a lot of ammo with a 650.
800 rounds an hour, buddy. As long as your arm don't wear out.
Yeah, exactly. Basically, Michelle, you know the deal. You're pumping. You got to have somebody filling the hoppers because you're cranking out ammo. It's a team event, isn't it?
It is a team event.
Oh yeah, and that's the whole thing. Getting everything set up from the get go. You don't want to, and I still check every round. And the reason I started reloading was just for hunting because I really got into shooting this 358 Norman Magnum. It was a old Enfield my brother had sporterized.
Yeah.
And he had the dies for it. So I started reloading. I think I could have probably found this out in the old hand loaders magazine you used to do. Was that I was at East 4. I was a buck sergeant. I didn't make a lot of money, so I couldn't afford a gel block. So what I did was I read in the magazine, go get these telephone books when they were really thick.
Yep.
And you take and soak them.
Well, I have done that so many times. Soaked telephone back when we had telephone books.
Right.
Yeah. Well, it's great.
and then we used newspapers back when we had newspapers.
Yeah. But it's a good thing to see your bullet performance. So I loaded up a bunch of rounds, and the one I found was a Hornady 250 round nose in a 250 grain, and it held together perfect. As a matter of fact, when I did get my brown bear in 79 down on a Fognac, she took 3 of them, as a matter of fact. The last one took her in the neck, and that's the only bullet I ever recovered. Out of 250 grain bullet, it weighed 247 grains after I washed it and boiled it and cleaned it all up.
Wow. Boy, that's a good performance.
It was perfect. Perfect mushroom. Even in telephone books, it mushroomed perfectly. And
the only thing about the wet phone books, and I will just tell you, for testing bullets, is that the cellulose, the material itself tends to hold bullets together, so you can sometimes get a misleading impression of what the performance is going to be in game. Ballistic gelatin works best. Water does the other thing. With shooting into water, it tends to blow bullets apart because the impact, they're non-compressible. Water is non-compressible, and it's really hard on bullets, and they'll sometimes blow up in water where they would actually perform well in games. So it's kind of, but most of us, at least back then, we didn't have access to gelatin. Now we can make our own ballistic gel.
I couldn't afford it, yeah. But, I went on a sheep hunt in 83 before I left up in the Alaska range, and I was using a 270, Jack O'Connor's favorite, and I used those 130 grain partitions. But when I shot them in my phone book, they did separate.
Yes. Well, partitions are supposed to separate.
Right, and it was perfect.
That's how they work. I mean, you're always going to lose the front core, which is going to give you that expansion when it first goes in, but then the back half is going to hold together, and it'll work almost like a solid, and you're almost always going to have about 60% weight retention on a partition, and that's okay. I can live with that. I've shot a bunch of stuff with partition bullets.
Yep, me too. And this ram took one shot, and it was over 200 meters. The front part of the bullet I found behind his left shoulder, and the end part of it traveled all the way up on the inside of his right back strap.
That's very cool. Jack, I appreciate it, man. I love swapping reloading stories of bullets and all the rest of it. Appreciate it, sir. We're going to keep rolling here. Thank you. Michelle, how long have you been reloading? Forever?
I do a little bit of reloading. My husband does most of the reloading.
Oh, he's the loader in the family.
Yep. But
I knew you had setups there.
Yeah, we do. And I know how. We do a lot of single stage work just because we want that precision. So we do a lot of, and we don't do a lot of progressive.
That's my favorite. In fact, I've never owned a progressive. I've always done single stage because I've always been doing low development generally, not trying to make like gobs. Now, that's not true with shot shells. I do.
Oh, yeah.
When it comes to shot shells, you just make in mass quantities, right?
Exactly. And that's it's a very simple process. I say it's a very simple process.
It is. And you just make it ammo.
Yep, exactly. And it's one of the things I did want to say. He brought up a great point that, yes, you can pump out all this ammunition, but you really need to do your load testing before you go throwing all that ammo out there, because you take it out and you shoot it and it doesn't perform quite right.
Yeah.
That's a lot of work to take them apart.
Or if you did all of this and you've got a couple thousand rounds there, and then you discover that you didn't have, for instance, the resizing dice set correctly, and the ammo will not chamber in your rifle. Mm-hmm. Yeah, how now I wasn't using a progressive, but I have had the deal with a semi-auto where the ammo would not chamber, didn't have the sizing dice set, and you don't have the camming force on a semi-auto that you do on a bolt action, where you can just honk down on it and get it to close. And actually missed a shot at a deer one time. I have to tell the story. Actually, it's my dad doing the reloading on it, so I hold it against him.
Not that there's any grudges still.
No. It was only 60-something years, no, almost 55 years ago. Yeah. Because I shot my first deer with my a 308 semi-auto. It was that same rifle that later on he was doing hand loads, and just... in fact, they sell small base reloading dies specifically for loading semi-autos. You want to make sure that you really have resized the case. Mm-hmm. Now, that's not very conducive to long case life, but, at that point, you don't really care. You just want it to work.
Well, there's so much. If somebody gets into reloading, there's so much to get into because, some people fire form their cases and there's only so much expansion that can happen before the throats start getting worn out, and you have to replace your brass. And
then you start trying with the rifle cartridge, different bullet seating depths, and you are adjusting them basically by the thousandth at a time.
Right.
And I have sat there and loaded, 5 rounds at this bullet seating depth, and then take this bullet seating die and give it like a teeny tiny turn, and then 5 more rounds, and then I'm measuring the overall cartridge length with micrometers, and have 30 different little bags of ammo, and take them out to the range. And when you shoot those for accuracy, you can shoot 5 rounds, but now you have to wait 15 minutes before you can shoot the next ones for the barrel to cool down. Mm-hmm. So there's a day.
When we do our competitive shooting, which is why we do reloading, because we want the most accuracy, the best accuracy that we can get for our rifles. It can be a little different for each gun too, but it's always fresh. It's not stuff that we might make our bullets. We do make our bullets all winter long, but we don't actually put our ammunition together until we're ready. We want it to be all fresh. We put it together just before we go, and we shoot.
Do you keep them in Ziploc bags to keep them fresh? That's weird.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Hey, Tom, I'll tell you how weird this stuff can get. We also cast bullets, but way back, this would have been, almost before my time, but I remember reading about it, and people still did it. They would take 22 caliber cartridge cases, fired brass cases from 22 rimfire, and then they would put a little slug of lead in it and put it in a big old swaging die that has this multiplier force, and basically they would make 22 caliber bullets, jacketed bullets, out of using the 22 caliber cases for the jacket and a slug of lead in the middle.
What?
Yeah, and then they would load those into the 22 Hornet and that kind of a thing.
Wow.
And that's how they saved money back in post-World War II, when people didn't have money. Even prior to World War II. You can go back and look. Yeah, they were using 22 rimfire cases for their copper jackets, and they had little slugs of lead, and they would put them in these swaging dies and squeeze them down and make 22 bullets out of them to load in their centerfire 22s.
Well, I guess that doesn't really surprise me, because all materials were being rationed back then, weren't they?
Excellent point. Yes, they were. It was all you could do, to get anything you could to shoot. And this was, way back then, there was a cult of people who shot groundhogs. And I know, Michelle, you know about that. You guys have groundhogs.
Yep. Those are the people that wanted winter to end 6 weeks sooner.
That would have been so great if it would be yesterday. Yeah.
I like it. That's right. I'm going to go out and shoot Phil now.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, no. Phil. Yeah, no.
Don't drive angry. Oh, my gosh. That was before I ever heard of anybody shooting prairie dogs, but groundhogs was the big deal. And it was really the groundhog hunters who became the accuracy buffs of pre-World War II.
Those were the long-range guys.
Those were the long-range guys shooting all the way out to 400 yards.
Yep.
With 22 Hornets.
Yep, it all started.
Yeah, and Wildcats and the Warren Pages of the world, who were then that became the competitive shooters, and I guess bench rest ended up coming out of that. And bench rest then evolved to what we have now, which is long-range shooting, which is really nothing more than bench rest shooting at longer ranges.
Right. We have to stretch it out more and more and more.
Well, what happened is, at 100 yards, they could pretty much put them all in one hole.
Mm-hmm. So it has to be a bigger challenge.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty interesting, though. So, Tom, have you seen this alleged 4570 rifle?
No, I don't know if it's in his hands yet. He has to go through all those pesky federal laws. Before.
I thought you could just buy this stuff online and they would just ship it to your house.
He won it. He should have just been able to walk out the door with it.
I thought they just threw out guns like Smarties at a parade.
I keep walking around downtown because I keep hearing about all guns on the street. I'm looking, I don't see any.
Nice.
Oh, well, that is, I love my 4570. Well, I don't. I love it and I hate it.
Right?
Because it has that plastic butt pad on it.
You've got an old one.
Oh, it's old and it hurts. I mean, really, it's not fun. I love carrying it and I love what it is. But, man, 3 or 4 of those, you're going, okay, I'm done. Thanks. That sounds good. But I need to find a local gunsmith who could put a recoil pad on it. I know it's not a big job, but it's got to find somebody and do that. And then I would enjoy it. I've got essentially an early ghost ring sight on it.
Oh.
You remember the Williams peep sight?
Yep.
Well, I have one of those on it, and then I unscrewed the little aperture thing and threw it away.
Oh.
So now I just have this big old ring where the aperture screwed in, and it's like, this was before we had ever heard the term ghost ring. I went, well, that would be faster if I did that. So I just threw it away and went, okay, that's cool.
Yeah, that's what we use on our small bore guns.
Yeah? Mm-hmm. The Williams peep sights?
Yep.
It's amazing what you can do with a peep sight, isn't it?
It is. Absolutely.
People say, it's iron sights. What can you do with that? Well, I could hit a target all the time at 600 yards with it.
It's what you're conditioned to. It's what you know.
Well, no, I can't do that. Ben can do that. Your son can do that.
Yeah.
Because he's got those young eyes.
Yeah, you look down and you're like, I can't even see that target.
I don't know if I ever told you the funniest deal, talking about front sights. I was at a media event at Gunsight. They had all these gun riders, and a lot of them were gray-haired, like me, right? And we got this typical deal. We got a new gun. So we all got these new guns they want us to shoot, new handguns. And this one guy's shooting. He's going, damn, I can't even see the front sight. And the guy looks over and says, that's because it's on the ground between your feet.
Oh.
It had fallen off.
Oh, my gosh.
Prototypes.
Oh, that hurts.
Lord. The stories about when we get invited out to shoot these prototypes, these early models, and the stuff that breaks and falls off, and you're going, yeah, that's great. Okay, I appreciate that, but I can't write it up until you have a production unit out. Because what can I say about it?
So that's why we have more than just duct tape nowadays.
Lord, I had a slide break on one. I don't know, like 6 or 10 rounds into it. Going, okay, there's a problem. We might want to go back to the drawing boards here, guys.
Mm-hmm. Has that ever made you nervous going out there and shooting prototypes?
You know, it probably should, but it doesn't. Yeah. Most of the guns are really good and work just fine.
Mm-hmm. Well, they have to go through standards before they even get into your hands then, too.
Well, and I try not to be if they have like 2 groups that are going to shoot them, I'll let somebody else go in the first group.
I'll be the follow-up.
That's right. You guys run 100 rounds through it, now I'll pick it up and try it. How's that?
Makes sense.
Yeah. You know, and of course, most of them, I mean, the truth of it is, most of them are variations on a theme. It's a new finish.
Right.
Oh, cool, you know.
Same gun. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, same gun, different finish.
Yeah.
And so many of the manufacturers now really do test the devil out of these things.
Right.
I think about, what was it, the new XDM and 10 millimeter? I think they said they'd run 10,000 rounds or 100,000, some kind of nutty number had run through it. And I'm thinking, well, I'm glad it wasn't me doing that.
Well, some of these companies will, like, for instance, we have firearms on our range, and some of these companies are like, okay, you know, they may call you and be like, how many rounds do you think have gone through that firearm? And would you be interested in sending it back so we can do some studies on it?
Oh, that's very interesting.
Like, yeah, we can do that. And this is about how many we think have gone through it.
Well, and I would think you would develop a pretty good idea of which guns hold up.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Because, wow, at a range where you have rental guns, they're just being shot more than any individual would ever shoot them in a lifetime.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And they're not being babied.
No. It's like you drove it like you stole it thing.
Got a few bumps and bruises and scratches. Right. Yeah. I was at one of these gunfighting schools one time, and you got people that show up with their really fancy-dancy, cool guns with the nice finishes. The guy says, okay, that's great. Everybody unload them. All right, good. Lock slides back, okay? Throw them on the gravel.
Oh.
What? Throw them on the gravel.
That hurts.
I know. He says, this is a working tool.
That guy, bends down and places his gun on the grass.
That's when you think, I should have brought my Glock. Because who cares if
Where's
the Glock gets all beat up?
Yeah,
I bring my Tupperware. I said, okay, I'm going back to the range bag. I'm going to get that backup gun I brought. I'll be right back.
Not showy. Utilitarian.
Yeah, I've got my $5,000 Wilson Combat Ed Brown special here. Says, yeah, well, I mean, that's fine as long as you understand that it's a tool.
Right? Ugh.
I know. You're thinking, I can't do that.
It hurts.
It's kind of why we have our combat Tupperware, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Oh, goodness. What have you guys been shooting? Tom, what have you been up to?
Oh, just practicing with the Kimber.
You still liking it?
I am loving it. I got that Taurus back after it was repaired, and it worked just fine, and I put it away and kept using the Kimber.
Yeah, it works that way. I mean, well, let's see. One costs twice as much as the other.
Mm-hmm.
For a reason.
A little quality difference.
For a reason. There's just for a reason. Now, do I remember right, you have the 9mm?
Yeah, the micro.
What a nice pistol that is.
It is. It really is.
A 1911 in 9 is just so sweet. It's honestly why I'm looking at that lightweight Commander. I'm thinking about, I could do that. I can shoot. And you know how it is, Michelle. You kind of like the things you shot when you first got started shooting. Mm-hmm. You end up rolling right back to those eventually.
Right. Yep. It's a safety net. It's what feels like home in the hand.
Yeah.
It is. It's like going home.
Yep. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's okay, Tom. You can buy a new gun.
Oh, thank you. Woo, boy. I was sweating that one.
Shoo!
I was afraid I was going to have to self-enable.
So, speaking of new guns and along the 1911s, my goodness, did we have a Colt King Cobra come through.
Yeah, I just shot that out at the SHOT Show. So you got one at the shop?
Well, we did have, yes.
It's gone?
Oh, yeah, it's gone.
Now, did it go elsewhere or did it go into your home?
Nope, it went elsewhere.
Okay. Isn't it nice, though?
Oh, my goodness. It was amazing. Yeah. Amazing.
It's a little smaller frame. It's 357 Colt double-action revolver, and it's sweet. It just is sweet.
Yeah. I mean, the hammer was so smooth, and the trigger pull was smooth, and, yeah, just great job. Great job by Colt.
You just pick it up, and you pull the trigger a few times, and you're going, wow, this is really nice. So you could just feel everything moving and not grinding and moving like it's supposed to. And you're going, yep, this is sweet.
I don't know how many years it took them to get that perfected.
Well, they had to re-perfect it because, this is one of those stories. Colt made great revolvers.
They did.
I mean, they really did. The Python was the top of the heap, really. And then they had new leadership. And honestly, what they did was they said, our money is to be made with government contracts making M4s. Mm-hmm. We don't care if we ever sell another gun to a civilian. And they not only stopped making the revolvers, they destroyed all the machinery to make them. So they can't we'll just crank up the line again. It's gone. It's why everybody always says, why can't you make the Pythons again? That's gone. All that stuff. So they're having to start from scratch, which, when you think about it, may not be a bad thing because now they can use the CNC machines instead of the old stuff, which frankly required a talented person at the end who could adjust everything. It's kind of hard to find those people now. The guy who's worked for the company for 25 years and knows every thing about how to...
all the facets of it, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think my prediction is that at some point in the future, and I have absolutely no information about this. It's not like, gee, Tom knows things. No, not in this case. But I'll bet you they end up making a Python.
Oh, you would think they'd have to,
wouldn't they?
Oh, yeah. Why would you venture out to make the King Cobra again if you weren't going to expand to the Python again?
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Now the question is, what would people pay for a new Python? Because they're paying $3,000 for an old one.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me tell you, the King Cobras aren't cheap.
So. What are those going for? $1,000?
Oh, just under. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
a little over $9,000.
I think you could sell a Python for $1,500.
This would be my guess. Yeah, $1,500, $1,600.
I think people would pay that for a Python.
That's steep, isn't it? When you think about what you could have gotten one for all those years ago.
It is. Well, there's the problem with us living a long time, guys.
Here's a $600 gun. Yeah.
We remember what stuff cost back then. And we go,
right?
Well, I'm never going to pay $10 to go to the movies. Well, then you're not going to go to the movies.
Right.
It's, I mean, we go back to, I remember what a gallon of gas used to cost. Great. That has nothing to do with anything today.
Right. Me too.
Yeah.
Good
same
story.
deal, right? I mean, just there it is. It's,
right. Milk and bread was cheaper then too.
But honestly, man, well, a nice, upper grade 1911 is $1,500 now.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I mean, you could get very nice 1911s for $700 to $900, but when you start moving up into the Kimbers and a little bit better level, they're all $1,500.
Right. Yes. Right. And
I don't know.
For the performance and for the feel and for the nostalgia of it, people go for it.
They would. I think, man, a 6-inch barrel Python, such a sweetie. And then for carry, a 4-inch barrel would be sweet, really nice.
Right.
We'll see. I think they're going to, I don't know when And the King Cobra, I mean, if you like nostalgia, if you like Colts, you got to go take a look at the King Cobra. And I think you're right, Michelle, though. If you find one in the store, you might not want to say, well, I'll go talk to my wife and come back.
Yeah, don't think about it.
Just do it.
It evaporates.
Yeah, the next person who picks it up is going to go, done, here's the plastic.
Exactly.
Done.
Exactly.
No, don't put it in a box. I'm just going to carry it out in my hand.
Let me go find you a holster for that. You need to show everybody.
Now, there's a barbecue gun for you.
Oh, my goodness. Yep.
Tom, you know what a barbecue
gun?
Barbecue gun? Yeah. When you're in Texas, when you're invited to a barbecue, a big party outside barbecue, you wear your fancy gun and fancy holster so everybody gets to see your barbecue gun.
Okay.
Yeah. That Kimber of yours would qualify as a barbecue gun. But of course you don't carry conceal when you're doing that.
Right, it's got to be open.
No, yeah, we're open carrying out there. And we got our hat and our boots. We're good to go. So you got to have a barbecue gun ready to go, just in case you get invited to a cool barbecue. Now, tailgating might be a whole different thing. You might be careful about that.
Depending on where your tailgate was parked.
Exactly. There it is. All right, guys. Well, this has been fun. I particularly enjoyed, there were a couple of calls there that were a hoot and a half. Mm-hmm. Let's see. Oh, Jill was funny as all get out. Tell me, was he working at a shopping cart factory?
Yeah.
I guess they got to be made somewhere.
Right.
Never thought about that.
And a street vendor, so she probably couldn't. Yeah.
Yeah. Different circumstances, different deals.
Right.
There it is. All right. So for everybody out there, go start researching hand loading. If you're looking for a hobby, this is a good one.
It's fun.
All right. Have a good week, guys.
Thanks, Tom.
Take care. Well, that wraps up another Gun Talk After Show. But if you want even more gun-related stuff, don't forget to check out Gundealio. It's the app for Apple and Android phones that connects you to all the Gun Talk shows, plus even more. And we'll catch you next time for the Gun Talk After Show.